Greetings, friends. I'm Jen Hilman. Thanks so much for joining me today as I guide you through some simple massage techniques for relieving pressure and tension in the low back and hips. So if you are working with someone who's dealing with chronic sciatic problems or just chronic low back pain, these are going to be some excellent massage techniques to help alleviate that tension right away. So go ahead and like this video. Leave your comments below, and don't forget to subscribe to the new channel. So to begin, I like to start with just some gentle compression and stretching along the spine. Just start to open things up and loosen up any tension that's on the surface of things. So standing at the head of your partner, you can start by placing your hands just right across the tops of the shoulders, leaning in your body weight and giving a gentle pressure here. Then making my way down the back, I'll take one step down, kind of coming to that space right behind the heart, leaning in. Making my way further down, we start to come into the low back. So you may start to notice if there's any areas of tension that you can feel from here. Then placing my hands all the way at the base of the spine, kind of coming into that space right above the sacrum. I'm using the heels of my hands and just leaning my weight in, kind of pressing in a direction towards her heels. So getting a sense of lengthening through the low back and the whole spine. Now you can take this into a subtle, full spinal stretch by placing one hand flat against the sacrum, still giving it that downward pressure, then bringing the other hand to hook in just below the occipital ridge. So I've got my thumb on one side, my index finger on the other side, giving a nice gentle hold. I start to pull the skull away from the sacrum as I press the sacrum down. So just gently lengthening the whole spine. So this can be very subtle, but your partner will feel it, and it's nice and deep. It feels very, very relaxing and good. Then after giving them that nice full length spine stretch, you're going to come all the way up. And this is where we can start to apply some oil to the skin to lubricate and start to move into some of those deeper techniques. So I like to use a CBD topical cream. It is excellent for relieving pain. It not only works to relieve pain in the moment, but when you continuously apply CBD, it works to actually heal and repair our muscle tissue. So it's very healing and therapeutic in the long term, as well as alleviating your pain in the immediate. So I highly recommend CBD to be applied topically to the body. I prefer to use the Conochrysm by Desert Stone Tools. It's some of the highest quality that I have found, and it makes a tremendous difference when, working with that CBD. It's not all created equal. And if you guys follow me, you know I won't settle for anything less than the best. So warming the CBD oil in my hands, I'm going to glide this oil across her skin and down into the low back. Since this is our area of focus, I'm going to make sure that I adequately spread this CBD all over the area in the low back and across the tops of the hips here. You can use CBD very liberally, and especially this Conochrysm, it blends very well into the skin. It's very hydrating and nourishing for the skin, so you don't have to think twice about, applying a little more. It's really, really so good for the skin, so feel free to use an ample amount. So after I've warmed up the back and applied that CBD all over, I'm going to come along to one side, whichever side I'm going to work. And this is where we will begin. Now, I like to start with just a little work with my forearms here. You can apply a little bit of the oil onto your forearms as well, just to make sure that your skin is also lubricated. And then I'll come in, applying my forearm right into the QL, the quadratus lumborum. And that is right in the area between the bottom of the rib cage and the top of the hip bone. So once you lean in here, you can really slowly glide your forearm across that tight muscle. Be mindful of where the point of your elbow is going, because that's going to be very sharp and very acute, the pressure that you can apply with that pointy part of your elbow. So I really try to focus more on working with the flat part of my forearm. That's a little bit more gentle tool than the actual point of the elbow. So again, you can come in leaning forward, applying that flat part of your forearm. And just bear in mind that if you do come across any places that feel very tight, where you want to apply more and specific pressure, you can start to bend into the elbow gently, and that will start to give you a little bit deeper and more specific pressure. So you have some options there. Then after using my forearm to massage that QL, I like to use my hands to just do some gentle kneading here. In the massage world, we call this petrissage. So that is that sense of kneading. And this is where you'll really start to palpate and feel where the muscles are tight. And if you've been watching any of my other videos, then you know this is how I like to start to get a sense of where the particular knots or trouble spots might be. And then I'll come in with more specific pressure, targeting those areas that are very tight. So you can use the thumbs here, or sometimes the low back can be really, really tight. Your thumbs are not quite strong enough to fully penetrate those superficial muscles. That's when you might come in and start to use the elbow a little bit more, right? But just be mindful when you are using that elbow. You don't want to use a crazy amount of pressure. You can always start light and work deeper and deeper, taking your time to get there. Then after I've done some good work into the low back, I also want to give some attention to this area across the top of the hips. I like to use the flat parts of my knuckles here to start to make some circles around the outer hip. So I'm coming along just like the edge of the sacrum and basically tracing the line across the top of the hip. And this is, again, an area that you might start to feel some knots or some tight places, and you can take your time there. If you do come across any particular areas that you want to work, I still like to use that flat parts of the knuckles. I feel like you can get a strong, firm pressure there without getting too specific, because the glutes and the tops of the hips is another area that can be very, very sensitive and very tender. So you want to start slow and work your way in. That is always my advice. You know, it's like when you're seasoning your food, you can always add a little more, but you can't take any away. It's the same idea. You know, you can always work a little bit deeper, but you don't want to just go in abruptly when your partner's not ready to receive that. So after I've worked one side of the low back, I like to do a little stretch. So I'm just bringing the heel of my hand across the top of the hip and to the top of the shoulder, just giving that nice long lengthening stretch. And then we can prepare to move to the second side. So starting with our forearm work, we're coming in using primarily the flat part of your forearm. Leaning in your body weight, being gentle with your elbow. It's also helpful if your hand can be in a relaxed state. because it softens the muscles around your forearm. You can try this pass a couple of different times. I like to work in groups of 3, but you certainly don't have to. You can trust your intuition, trust your instinct for how many times you want to work this stretch. And after you've done that work with your forearm, you can start to knead into the muscle. And this is where I really use my hands to help me determine where is it the most tight? What needs the most attention? Where are the tight spots hiding? And so for Veronica here, I'm noticing a lot kind of along the side of that back muscle. So I'm coming in with my thumbs to gently apply that pressure into the low back. If you notice any places that are especially tight, or if your partner's body is just really tight, you can come in with the forearm and start to use the elbow to work into those more specific points, but only if you feel like that's needed or if it's going to be beneficial. And I like to work along the top of the hip, using the flat part of my knuckles, tracing that line from the edge of the sacrum down to the outer hip. And this is another area just to remind you to be very mindful about the amount of pressure that you're using. And this is a very large muscle group that we're starting to tap into. So you may notice knots or tight spots in any number of places. So it's really important to take your time, slow down, feel what you feel. And if you come across any places that are particularly holden, you can use a little more pressure there, giving it a little more attention, getting that more specific pressure. And again, I like to still use the flat parts of my knuckles. I feel like it gives me enough pressure without being too invasive. So you can take as much time as you need to work those tight spots into the top of the hip and to the low back. And once you feel complete, we can take that long side stretch, bringing the heel of the hand to the top of the hip and a hand to the top of the shoulder, and just stretching it out from there. And you can come all the way back to the top of their head. And I like to finish with a long stroke all the way from the top of the shoulders all the way down, so that even though we've spent a majority of our time focusing on the low back and the top of the hips, there's still a sense of completion, of fullness, working the whole back. So here I'm just alternating the heels of my hands across the top of the sacrum. There are a lot of muscular attachments that come in and attach right here on the sacrum. So this is an area that feels really good to massage some of those tendons and ligaments that are attaching there. And moving to my knuckles one more time. I'm just going to make about 3 or 4 good circles around the top of the hips. I'm not using too much pressure here. My main focus is just relaxation. And then you can glide your hands all the way back up to the shoulders. And if you want to, you can even take this stroke all the way up the neck and to the base of the skull. Now, before I end a massage, I always like to take a moment of stillness, either placing your hands on your partner's head or maybe a hand at the low back where you just worked. And give yourself a moment to ground and to feel a sense of gratitude and appreciation for this person and for the chance to share this work. And I thank you for allowing me to be your guide. Don't forget to favorite this video and trade with your partners so that you can receive this wonderful massage experience as well. Special thanks to my friend Veronica for being my gracious massage model today. You can learn more about Veronica at her Instagram account is Veronica Rockstar DeWitt. You can also visit her website, vitamindance.com. Thanks so much for joining me today. I hope you have a wonderful afternoon, and I'll see you next time. Namaste.